Hey everybody, and welcome to What is a Request Being Fulfilled? This is a special Christmas sort of episode. Uh, well, it's being recorded on Christmas Eve, so that's the Christmas part of it, but this will probably come out around New Year's Eve, maybe? Who knows? Hopefully. The request was to record video footage of a new, well, it isn't new anymore, it's about a year old, cartridge device called BackBit for the Commodore 64. But I decided I'm going to do a full video of various modern media storage devices for all sorts of retro gaming devices, such as Commodore 64, ZX Spectrum, NES, Super NES, Sega Mega Drive, Atari. Well, you're going to see. Just keep watching.
First, the Harmony cartridge for the Atari 2600. The Harmony cart is a fairly basic SD card reader which can load pretty much any ROM binary image file into the memory of the Atari. Now this is actually the Encore version of the Harmony cart, which enables you to play larger games than the regular Harmony. My Harmony Encore has a little problem, that it has the native NTSC BIOS, which I have been unable to switch to a PAL BIOS, probably due to my Windows being too old or something like that. It just isn't able to recognize the cartridge through USB in any manner, for whatever reason. Therefore, this is the only way for me to show this cartridge in action to you, because my DVD recorder doesn't respond well to NTSC signal. It's a pretty straightforward cartridge to work with, because the only files you need to have on the SD card are the game program image files. Personally, the biggest reason for me to buy the Harmony Encore was precisely to get to play the new homebrew games on my actual Atari 2600 Junior, but I can't deny its convenience compared to browsing through the increasingly large cartridge collection. The Harmony cartridges are available at Erstwhile Technologies, and the prices are $40 for the regular version and $55 for the Encore.
Now this here is the SIO to SD, an SD card reader for the Atari 8-bit computers, and it plugs to the back of the Atari like this. Now, I'm not sure if this is the most recent version of SIO to SD from Lotharek, but I know there are various different models of it on their website. And this is although it looks like the basic version, this is the most expensive version available. I'm not sure why exactly, but so there is.
The SIO to SD device from Lotharek is a neat little device with a fairly nice LCD display, and it is attached to the SIO port, which is usually reserved for the tape drive. The SIO to SD is able to read disk images, cartridge images, and various types of executable files, but it doesn't read cassette image files. Although the buttons on the device don't really say what they do on the casing, it's easy to get to grips with how to use it. But with my rate of usage, it's also easy to forget what each of the buttons do. But it's a good alternative to upgrade your 8-bit Atari computer to this millennium. Lotharek sells the SIO to SD in 3 different editions. The regular one that I have is available in 3 colors and costs about 58 euros currently for the white and black versions, and the grey version is currently just above 60 euros. The revised version has no casing and needs the cables and software bought separately, but it costs only about 39 euros currently. The biggest Dickus edition costs just about 53 euros with all the necessary added cables, etc.
Okay, this is the latest in the DivMMC line of SD card readers for the ZX Spectrum, and what it does better than the previous models is that it doesn't have any jumpers in it that you need to change.
in order to make it more compatible with other models of the ZX Spectrum. And this has a neat little joystick port, Kempston compatible joystick port here. And I actually have two of these at the moment because I accidentally chipped a bit of this so it doesn't actually work properly. The only thing that is working here is the joystick port, but the new replacement does work perfectly, and it's even upgraded with its firmware, so what the heck. Alright, the way I have my Sinclair ZX Spectrum 128K Plus 2 set up here is I have the DivMMC Future device inserted into the expansion port. I have a newly bought RGB cable. Now, let's see if this works, because the most iffy part of the Sinclair ZX Spectrum computers is the power cable. Okay? Now, yeah, that seems to work. If I touch the red button here, it goes into the file browser of the DivMMC device. Now let's see, I go here into ZX 128, start Chase headquarters, and it takes a while because it's a 128K game, but it definitely works. Not all of the 128K games work on the DivMMC, but this one seems to work just fine. Hold on, man. Yeah, that works pretty well. But if I push the red light button again, it goes into the file system again. And let's choose something that I'm pretty sure that doesn't work. Daily Thompson Super Test, that might be one exactly. That doesn't work completely. Now, redefine keys, left, right, fire. This game is one of those that works up to some point. I can play this up until the next event starts. And not all games work even this far as 128K games. Some just refuse to boot at all. If you hear that, that's completely wrong. The music is, and there you go, it just starts going worse and worse. Just nope. Complete gibberish there. So yeah, that's one of the little faults with the DivMMC Future. It doesn't really work that well with the 128K Spectrums, but it does work completely with 48K games. I mean, let's go with Booty, for example. There's nothing wrong with this game. Define keys, left, right, up, down, enter. So yeah, it's completely okay. I could actually have tested this with my 48K, but I just thought you might want to see it in action with a 128K Spectrum, so there you go. Of course, this wouldn't be very consumer-friendly advice if I didn't tell you about any of these devices' problems that they might have. So, for example, the DivMMC Future, it doesn't read or write any TZX files, which are the perfect cassette tape image files, including all the possible
loader data in them that the enthusiasts would prefer to have. And it doesn't, if I remember correctly, it doesn't read cartridge files either. But that's a small problem because the ZX Spectrum didn't have much of cartridges in the first place.
I took a long time trying to decide what sort of mass media device to buy for my Canon V20 MSX machine, because I was on a relatively tight budget back then. So I ended up with SD512 from 8-Bit Forever, because it cost only 60 euros compared to the more high-end Carnivore 2, for example. What SD512 is an SD card reader with 2 card slots, an onboard 512K RAM, which can be used in various ways, and Nexter kernel to access the storage media. For the simple task of running games, it's not the most comfortable item as it is, because you actually need to put some work into figuring out how to get things going. What I've done with this is just format 2 partitions for the SD card, install the necessary files for the device to actually work, and get experimenting on games. Since my Canon V20 is a first generation MSX computer with 64K of RAM in itself, the SD512 has a bit limited functionality, and there are functionality differences between different MSX1 computers. And then there's the problem of getting the ini files edited to fit your system, for which you need an understanding of how to actually edit the ini file contents so that the changes work, which is necessary for getting the file and directory structure right for getting anything working properly. Even still, I've come across many game ROM files that haven't booted up properly for whatever reason, and the system doesn't inform you about what the problem might have been. It's just too much of a hassle for half of the time, even with SofaRun, the launcher program of choice for most of the current MSXers. The positive effect of having an SD512 for me has been the purchase of a cassette drive for the MSX, which took me almost 15 years to accomplish. Although the SD512 isn't capable of actually running cassette image files, at least on my Canon V20, it can load the cassette files up to the tape drive, which you use to record the cassette image files as audio, after which you can load them up with the MSX in its clean state, meaning with no SD card reader attached to it. And naturally, this also inspired me to buy MSX tape games, so having an affordable SD card reader can have positive effects on your collection. Next, I have 3 items I might as well lump together because they were all bought from Stone Age Gamer. First, I have Everdrive N8 for the NES, which also works fine with Famicom if you have an adapter for it. My version is the cheap model, which cost around 100 euros plus postage. There's a Pro version available for closer to 150 euros, which has some nice features such as a USB port, a real-time clock, and an in-game system menu, and it's basically a much more powerful version of the old Everdrive N8. If you're an NES game developer, the Pro version might come in handy. For us regular users, the old version is good enough. My SD card reader for the Super NES is called SD2SNES, which has recently changed its name due to some trademark conflict. I bought mine when the SD2SNES became more powerful and before it was renamed SD2SNES Pro, so it cost around 160 euros plus postage and is compatible with most Super NES games. The most recent Super Everdrive isn't nearly as compatible with games that use special hardware as the device now known as FX Pack Pro. The FX Pack Pro costs the same as its unrenamed version, while the latest Super Everdrive costs only about 70 euros, but if you're a Super Nintendo fan, you're gonna need the FX Pack Pro. So far, the last one that I have from Stone Age Gamer is Mega Everdrive, which is kinda obviously a very similar Everdrive device for the Sega Megadrive to the one for the NES. Even the browser is similar. My Mega Everdrive is an X7 model, so it's not the newest and most powerful available, but it was at the time, and it's still your best option if you want audio playback and a USB port for it, and at the very least it cost around 135 euros plus postage. For Sega CD compatibility, you'll need a Mega CD device, which is much more powerful, but it doesn't have audio playback or a USB port, and it costs over 160 euros. Nothing particularly interesting about these, but the basic gist is, the more you pay for a device like this, the more features you get for them, and then the plastic boxes, the paper documentation, and even the color of the cartridges themselves might cost you some extra. If you're into customization, there's a good number of nice options available, and they're easy to use, which is an important factor in purchase decisions.
Now, my Amiga 500 has been equipped with a GoTek floppy emulator, which kind of looks like this from the side. It is using the ADF disk image in slot number 15 at the moment, which contains, I believe this is north and south, right here. Yep. Number 0, which you can switch from these two buttons here on the side. The number 0 disk image contains, I have to actually reset the computer in order to access it, obviously. It contains the flash floppy library, the file selector thing. And yeah, so here we go. You can navigate it with arrow keys here, and let's see, select 0 to 9. Let's take 20games.adf and put it on slot 17. Press F10 to save the selections. And, well, the problem is that you actually need to select it manually, because the file selector always resets to 001. But this is how it works. And here's 20 games from whatever company this is. I don't know. My newest purchase is an Atari STFM 520 with a GoTek pre-installed here. I'll turn this on so you can see. Well, you can't see much, obviously, because it only shows the most recent disk image there, which is the media navigator thing. But yeah, it's basically the same thing that I have in the Amiga. Okay, now we can dig into the world of Commodore 64, because that's where I have most of my modern peripherals for retro computers. And we start with the EasyFlash cartridges because, well, that's probably the easiest thing to get into if you want something for the Commodore 64. The first EasyFlash is, well, it's probably out of print right now, but it holds 1 megabyte of information, of data in it. And you can build your own compilations of games for it, or tools, or whatever. And it has a reset button there, and it has a button that you can disable the cartridge with next to it. And that's basically what EasyFlash was. And the EasyFlash 3 contains a menu that you can reset into. It has a special button that enables any action from an action replay sort of cartridges, any snapshot cartridge you have installed into it. So this can handle those separately from any other cartridge game that you might have there. It holds 8 slots for 1 megabyte EasyFlash cartridge images. So it's not only 8 times bigger than this, but it has the ability to use snapshot cartridges. And you can use different kernels in it as well. And what else? Oh, and it has a USB port right there, so you can update the firmware of the EasyFlash card. And it has an inbuilt file transfer for any cartridge files you want to put into it and out. So yeah, that's a whole lot of cartridge stuff you can use with this. My other usual setup is to have a final cartridge and the Princess C64 SD3 from Manosoft SD card reader, because, well, let's not go there. Hang on. You have to start the computer by pressing the run stop down if you don't want to go into the final cartridge menu. But yeah, let's load FB so you can see it has a file browser of its own. Well, not of its own, but it is a very handy file browser at it. And this can actually, let's go to tap, because this can actually load tape image files. Let's go to some modern game like Digiloy, and this button here turns on and turns off the tape motor, and if you turn the volume from the back, you can also hear, hopefully, yeah, the tape actually being loaded. It's a wonderful noise, isn't it? And that's something you don't hear with an actual dataset. But yeah, that's a handy piece of equipment also. The thing with the final cartridge is, of course, that it reduces loading times drastically if you don't have anything better. But yeah, that's pretty quick. Coupled with the SD card reader, it's a pretty good combination to have. Final cartridge and whatever SD card reader you have. Yeah, the Princess and other more modern Manosoft products have a tap support, so that's something bonus. Okay, I've saved the longest one for last. Obviously, it's the BackBit cartridge that I'm gonna be talking about for the next, I'd say 20 minutes maybe, because that's how much there is to tell about this. Of course, if something goes missing from my narrative, you can find more information from Evie's review channel. So here we go, BackBit. Now the BackBit cartridge goes into the cartridge port where every other Commodore 64 cartridge goes, back there. And I have also bought a joystick port switcher from Evie Solomon, who made the BackBit cartridge. And I also have this Genesister, which goes into both ports, as does the port switcher here. And this can use a Genesis or Megadrive controller with your Commodore 64 with no problems. Without one of these or other such devices, a Megadrive or Genesis controller could be a bit dangerous for your C64. It could blow some fuses or whatever. Not that it ever happened to me, but this is a very good item to have, because you can also utilize all three buttons on your Genesis or Megadrive controller. And it has these switches here, which can alter what the buttons do. And yeah, it's a very handy thing to have. Another useful thing to have for the BackBit cartridge is the back button, with which you can reset the BackBit cartridge. It plugs into the cartridge with this sort of a similar looking thing to a stereo sound cable, 3.5 jack thing. So yeah, and the BackBit uses micro SD cards here. So there you go. Okay, let's go. So this is the newest firmware update of BackBit cartridge, and it can run some Atari 800 games also, but only cartridge ROM images. But since I'm now currently browsing it on the Commodore 64, I'm not going to be able to load them. I have to use a special adapter for it, which looks like this at the moment. There you go. Nothing very special looking, but it works. Now, the BackBit cartridge is able to read and write D64 files, program files, cartridge files, most of them at anyway. It can read some EasyFlash cartridge images also. Not all of them work, but some of them do. You can also run SID files, because it has a inbuilt SID file player. Not all of these work, but let's try that one. Okay. That doesn't sound right, but there is a SID player inbuilt into the system. Now, if you use the function keys here, pressing F1 takes you to the utilities and other options. Now, properties for... Well, where am I? Okay, let's try properties for 1942. It goes to F3. It says it's a program. It says it's 33.3 kilobytes in size. You can have saves for any program file. Now F7 goes to a toolkit for whatever you want to do for the program file selected. In the file browser here, you can push run stop and it goes to the basic mode. But you need to push reset again to get back to the file browser. And you can also search for any file, let's say something with L, E, D. And that's pretty neat there. Its major advantage is the speed at which it loads games, and let's go with 180. And there you go. And that's the back button being used. The game I launched here, 180, and all these other 500 and some games are part of the One Load 64 collection, which is compiled by a guy called StatMat, I think. And yeah, they're all insta-loadable games like this. And it's just completely puts the BackBit cartridge in its own league. You see, the thing about the One Load 64 collection is that all the games on it are ripped from originals, and they load from the precise moment that the game should start. So there's only like a 1 or 2 second delay in the load, as opposed to having a well, if you have cracked games, you normally would have something like a decrunching period, which takes a few seconds, and then a crack intro, and then some more decrunching, and then you get a trainer menu or something like that, and then you might get a loading picture or something. It might take a full minute before you get into the game with a cracked version. Good cracks are bug fixed most of the time, so that's something really preferable with those. But if you want just the original experience, bugs and all, but with the advantage of having very quick loads, then the One Load 64 collection is your thing. And having it loading from the original hardware, C64, with the BackBit is the fastest way to deal with it, and with proper hardware. That's a very high advantage of having a BackBit. That's it for now, folks. All the links featured in this video will be featured also in the corresponding blog entry. And I will also be mentioning some other SD card readers and whatnot in the same text. So click on the link below in the video description and go to it. Happy hunting and Happy New Year. Stay safe.